Imagine this. Jaden Carter, a black student who just moved in, lies back on the lounge chair by the pool at his new home, savoring a rare moment of peace. This house is the result of years of hard work by his mother, a fresh start, a dream come true. But that peace quickly fades away. From the neighboring balcony, a group of rich kids stand, laughing and casting challenging glances at Jaden. A ping from his phone rings, a security camera alert. Jaden glances at the screen and immediately clenches his fists. Ethan and his crew are boldly climbing over the fence, tossing towels onto the lounge chairs, blasting music, acting as if this is their playground. Jaden takes a deep breath. They've done this before, but this time they'll regret it. Back to where the story began, Jaden Carter stands by the roadside, gazing at his new house with a bright smile. After years of living in a cramped apartment, he and his mother finally have a home of their own. Not too big, but beautiful and cozy. A pool in the backyard, the clear water reflecting the afternoon sun, is the feature he loves the most. His mother, Lisa Carter, steps out of the car with a tired but happy smile. She's a software engineer who has worked tirelessly for years to save up for this house. To her, this isn't just a house. It's the fruit of her hard work, a better future for her son. Jaden pulls his suitcase up the steps, excited and curious about the new neighborhood. But just as he's about to step inside, a cold shiver runs down his spine. He looks up and meets several pairs of eyes scrutinizing him. From the second-floor balcony of the neighboring mansion, a group of teenagers leans on the railing, staring at him intently. Among them is Ethan Thompson, a tall, blonde-haired boy in a designer polo shirt with an air of arrogance in his gaze. Ethan says nothing, just smirks, then quietly says something to his friends. Immediately, the whole group bursts into laughter, their mocking cackles ringing out. Jaden doesn't need to hear them to know they're talking about him. He sighs, yanking his suitcase into the house, trying to ignore them. But deep down, an uneasy feeling rises. He knows this isn't the last of it. Jaden didn't sleep well that night. It wasn't because of the new house or the strange noises from this quiet neighborhood, but because Ethan Thompson's gaze, along with his group of friends, haunted his mind. The mocking laughter echoed down from the balcony, the whispers Jaden couldn't make out but could tell were anything but kind. He tried to ignore it, tried to tell himself he didn't care, but something inside him urged him to stay vigilant. The next morning, after his mom had left for work, Jaden decided to check the security cameras his mom had installed before they moved in. It was just a routine check, but when he opened the app on his phone, the images that appeared made his blood boil. On the screen, around midday yesterday, while Jaden and his mom were busy cleaning inside, Ethan and 3 other friends casually climbed over the backyard fence as if it were the most normal thing in the world. They didn't act sneaky or hesitant, just threw their bags and jackets on the lounge chairs by the pool, then jumped right into the clear water. One of them, Tyler, a guy with stylish brown hair, was sitting casually with his legs crossed on the chair, holding a soda can, laughing and saying something to Brandon, who was standing on the pool's edge, splashing water at Ethan. Their laughter echoed through the camera, so loud and clear it felt like Jaden was standing right there. None of them seemed worried or guilty. On the contrary, they acted like it was the neighborhood's property, as if Jaden's presence meant nothing. Jaden kept watching, and what made him angriest was that they had littered all over the yard, crushed soda cans thrown carelessly on the ground, towels tossed haphazardly on the chairs, and even snack wrappers thrown into the pool. He clenched his phone tightly, a surge of frustration rising in his chest. He had never met people so openly disrespectful and dismissive of others. When the footage fast-forwarded to the moment they picked up their towels and lazily climbed out of the backyard as if nothing had happened, Jaden knew he couldn't stay silent. Jaden waited until Ethan and his group stepped out of the house that afternoon, standing right on the sidewalk where they were laughing and walking towards him. Ethan immediately recognized him, and instead of looking annoyed or uneasy, he smirked, the same mocking grin Jaden had seen the day before. "What's the problem?" Ethan asked, his tone casual, as if he were encountering a beggar blocking his path. Jaden didn't waste time with small talk. He stared directly into Ethan's eyes and spoke clearly. "You climbed into my yard." The whole group burst into laughter, but Jaden stood firm. "I thought this was the neighborhood pool." Ethan shrugged, trying to look innocent, but his eyes held a challenge. "No, this is my house. I want you and your friends to stay away from it." Jaden's voice was cold, not raised, but firm enough to make a few of the people behind Ethan stop smiling. However, Ethan remained smug, as if this conversation were just a game. The previous owners didn't mind, but he paused, scanning Jaden from head to toe, then slowly said, each word deliberate as if he wanted to engrave it into Jaden's memory. "Who does your mom work for here?" Jaden felt a cold chill run down his spine. The giggles around him faded, as if they were echoing from a distant place, because in that moment, Jaden's mind froze. He didn't say it outright, but the implication was crystal clear. "You don't belong here. You're just a lowly person. You can't possibly be the homeowner here." Jaden's lips twitched, his muscles tensed, but he forced himself to stay calm. Ethan was trying to provoke him, waiting for him to lose his temper so he could taunt him even more. So, instead of reacting the way Ethan expected, Jaden just stared at him, a cold, unflinching look, neither fearful nor shaken. "I don't have time to argue with you. Get lost." His words were simple, but carried a weight that made the air around them suddenly grow silent. Ethan, probably not expecting Jaden to avoid the trap, smirked and snorted. "We'll see each other again soon." He shot a challenging look at Jaden, then turned and walked away, the group following behind. But even as they disappeared, Jaden could still feel that this was just the beginning. He stood there, fist clenched, took a deep breath, and then headed back home, his mind racing with thoughts. There was one thing he knew for sure. Ethan Thompson had it out for him, and he wasn't going to stop. Jaden wasn't too surprised when Ethan's words turned out to be true. Just a few days after their confrontation on the sidewalk, he began to sense clearly that Ethan didn't just want to cause trouble. He wanted to make Jaden feel isolated, wanted to turn him into an outsider even in his own home. At first, it was just small jabs, but gradually the intensity increased, becoming deliberate acts of harassment. One afternoon, after school, Jaden walked into the backyard and couldn't believe his eyes. Ethan and his friends had thrown a pool party right in his own yard. The music was blasting, laughter echoed through the neighborhood, and bottles and snack bags were scattered all over the grass. Some girls in bikinis were lounging on sunbeds, holding glasses of juice as if this was their own private resort. Jaden's blood boiled, but he kept his cool, just standing there with his arms crossed, watching the group enjoy themselves as if nothing was wrong. When Ethan noticed him, he raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at his lips as if challenging him. "Oh, look who's back. How was school today, little man?" Jaden clenched his fists, but kept his voice calm. "Get out of my house, now." Ethan threw his head back and laughed loudly, as though he had just heard the funniest joke. "Calm down, Jaden. This pool hasn't been used much. We're just helping you enjoy it." A blonde girl beside him shrugged and laughed arrogantly. "Ethan's right. The previous homeowners didn't mind. They even invited us to swim." This time, Jaden didn't respond. He pulled out his phone and dialed the police right in front of them. Seeing this, the group started to stir, some girls whispering to each other, clearly not wanting to get involved in trouble. But Ethan remained unfazed, as if this was nothing to worry about. "Calling the cops? Over a pool? You really are new around here." He waved his hand to his friends, signaling the fun was over. But before leaving, he turned back, leaned in close to Jaden, and whispered loud enough for him to hear, "Playing this game isn't fun. Don't make us make things harder for you." Then he smiled, a relaxed grin but full of threat, before walking off with his friends, leaving behind a mess. Jaden stood still, his jaw clenched. He knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a series of dirty tricks. As Jaden had predicted, Ethan didn't stop there. If the first incident was a blatant invasion, the next ones were more subtle and underhanded. 1. Slandering on social media. Jaden started noticing videos of his house showing up on social media, accompanied by mocking comments. Still living in the smallest house on the block. This is what happens when you let strangers into a fancy neighborhood. They made his home a joke, as if its smaller size compared to the surrounding mansions made it a stain on the neighborhood. 2. Daily disturbances. Jaden began losing his newspaper every morning. At first, he thought someone had taken it by mistake, but when he checked the security cameras, he saw Tyler, one of Ethan's close friends, sneaking up to the porch, taking the paper, and tossing it into the gutter. 3. Destructive tactics. One day, Jaden's mom discovered the hydrangeas she'd carefully tended to were wilted. The leaves were yellowed, and the flowers had dried up. She bent down to check the soil and immediately smelled the chemicals. She knew someone had poured bleach into the flower bed. Jaden didn't need to think twice to figure out who the culprit was. For the entire week, Jaden felt his blood boil every time he stepped outside. He knew exactly what Ethan wanted. He wanted Jaden to react, to get angry, and do something foolish, so he could have more reasons to humiliate him. Jaden wanted to retaliate. He wanted to do something to teach them a lesson. But when he shared everything with his mother, she didn't seem panicked or angry. Instead, she placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice full of patience and understanding. "You don't have to tolerate them, but don't let them drag you down to their level." She looked into his eyes, her gaze strong yet encouraging. "But if you can make them face the consequences, I won't stop you." A spark flickered in Jaden's eyes. He nodded slowly. He understood now. He didn't need to fight Ethan. He didn't need to scream or threaten. He just needed a smart, sharp plan, one that they couldn't resist. And this time, Ethan would be the one embarrassed in front of the entire neighborhood. A game had begun, and Jaden was going to win. Jaden sat in front of the computer screen, the blue light reflecting off his eyes, a cold gleam of determination shining within them. Ethan had gone too far, and now, Jaden no longer just wanted to avoid him. He wanted to teach him a lesson he would never forget. He couldn't forget Ethan's face that day, when he stood right in front of Jaden, wearing a smug, taunting smile, as if everything he did was just a little game for his amusement. In Ethan's eyes, Jaden was nothing but a lowly, out-of-place stranger. He didn't see him as a threat, nor did he think Jaden could fight back. That was his biggest mistake. Jaden spent that entire evening researching clever pranks that wouldn't have too serious consequences. He didn't want to do anything dangerous, but he didn't want to let Ethan continue his antics either. He wanted Ethan to feel embarrassed, to realize that he wasn't above everyone else. And when he found a post on a chemistry forum, a perfect idea suddenly flashed into his mind. It was a trick from the pool maintenance industry, a special dye that was harmless to humans but had a very subtle mechanism. It didn't show any signs when dissolved in water, but when it came into contact with certain ingredients in high-end sunscreen, it triggered a chemical reaction, turning the skin of anyone who touched it into a deep green for several days. Jaden imagined Ethan and his friends, always bragging about their designer clothes and perfect appearances, suddenly showing up with green skin like characters straight out of a science fiction movie. The thought made him laugh. There was nothing dangerous, nothing illegal, but the effect would be unforgettable. He immediately ordered the dye from a specialized store, making sure it was high quality and wouldn't be easily detected in the pool water. Then, he continued researching to ensure it worked just as expected. 3 days later, a small package arrived at Jaden's door. He opened it to find bottles of clear liquid, looking no different from regular water. Jaden grabbed a bucket of water, mixed a small amount of the dye into it, and tested it with a sunscreen sample he found in a fashion magazine, the kind of high-end brand that Ethan and his friends surely used. He dropped a few drops of sunscreen on his hand, rubbed it in a little, then dipped his hand into the bucket of dyed water. Within seconds, the magic happened. The skin where the water touched began to turn a deep green, like a character from a sci-fi movie. The more he rubbed, the more the color spread. There was no way to wash it off immediately. He had tested it, and it would take at least a week to fade. Jaden laughed. An infrequent laugh filled with a sense of satisfaction he had never felt before. The perfect plan. He went on to do another test with pool water, ensuring it didn't change color even when fully dissolved. When he dipped his hand in without the sunscreen, nothing happened. The water remained clear, with no signs of anything unusual. Jaden nodded. Everything was ready. One quiet evening, when most of the neighborhood had gone to sleep, Jaden carefully brought the bottle of liquid to the pool. He poured small amounts into the water, using a pole to stir it gently, making sure it dissolved evenly throughout the pool. The water still looked clear as usual, but now it was a perfect trap waiting for Ethan and his friends to step into. But that wasn't enough. Jaden needed to ensure the entire event would be perfectly recorded. He double-checked the security camera system, adjusting the angles to cover the entire pool area from multiple perspectives. Just to be sure, he installed 2 small hidden cameras in strategic locations, ensuring that no matter how Ethan tried to deny it, he couldn't escape the evidence. Jaden looked around, took a deep breath. This time, Ethan would learn to respect others, his way. The next morning, Jaden happened to overhear Ethan talking to his friends near his gate. Ethan laughed arrogantly, his voice dripping with self-satisfaction. Today, that pool is ours again. Jaden's probably at school, being the good little boy, while we'll enjoy a perfect afternoon. One of his friends laughed, slapping Ethan on the back. Are you sure? He doesn't seem to like you hanging around his place. Ethan crossed his arms, sneering. So what? What's he gonna do? Call the cops? You think the cops care about some black kid in this neighborhood? I can do whatever I want, and he won't be able to change a thing. Jaden heard this and clenched his fists, not out of anger, but because he knew that in just a few hours, Ethan would regret saying those words. That afternoon, Jaden pretended to leave the house, as if he were really going to school or out to do something. But instead of driving far, he parked his car in a hidden spot near his house, opened the camera app on his phone, and got ready to record the most important moment of his plan. When the clock struck 2 p.m., Jaden's phone alert went off. He looked at the screen. There was movement in his backyard. They had arrived. Jaden smirked. Now, the real game was just beginning. Jaden leaned back in the driver's seat, the phone resting on the mount in front of him, the screen displaying a live feed from the security camera in his backyard. The sky was fading into dusk, the streetlights casting soft yellow streaks across the pavement. Yet his eyes remained fixed on the screen, every second passing like an eager wait. He knew Ethan wouldn't be able to resist this opportunity. Ethan had grown too accustomed to treating this neighborhood like his personal playground, bending the usual rules as if they were something he could mold to his will. For him, trespassing onto Jaden's property was simply a game, a way to assert his dominance in front of his friends, to prove that he could do whatever he wanted without facing any consequences. But tonight, everything would be different. Jaden studied the screen, his fingers lightly gliding across the phone to check each angle. No blind spots. Everything was set. All he needed was for Ethan to show up, and the trap would fall into place perfectly. Around 10 p.m., as expected, a notification from the camera app popped up. Movement detected in the backyard. Jaden tapped the screen. Ethan's silhouette appeared first, slipping through the fence, looking back and signaling to his friends. Behind him were Tyler, Brandon, and a group of girls, all dressed in trendy clothes carrying bags of alcohol and Bluetooth speakers. A blonde girl bounced along, laughing as Tyler played music from his phone, the bass thumping in the quiet neighborhood air. "Welcome to our private paradise." Ethan tossed his hair back, extending his arms as if he were standing on a stage. A beautiful pool, romantic moonlight, and no one to disturb us. Who wants to get in first? Laughter followed, some of the girls starting to remove their jackets to reveal expensive bikinis. Brandon pulled a can of beer from his bag, cracked it open, and tossed the can onto the pool deck without a second thought. Jaden watched the scene unfold through the screen and took a deep breath. The anger was still there, but this time it wasn't useless rage. It was controlled, calculated. Ethan stripped off his shirt, tossed it onto a chair, and walked toward the water. He looked around, as if to make sure no one was watching, but he had no idea that in a dark corner, a small camera was recording everything. "All right, if you're not getting in, you're a coward," he said, then dove into the pool with a dramatic splash. Boom! Water splashed, sparkling under the yellow lights. Tyler, not wanting to be outdone, followed him in right after. The others exchanged glances, then followed suit one by one, diving into the pool, the sound of water splashing filling the yard. Music, laughter, and the splashing of water stirred the air. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Jaden glanced at the time on his phone. Just a few more minutes. The pool remained silent, reacting to the chemicals in their bodies, second by second. Then, it began. Jaden saw the first signs of chaos. A girl with brown hair, Sophia, laughing with a friend, suddenly stopped. She frowned, raised her hand to look, eyes widening. "Wait, what's happening to my skin?" Tyler, leaning on the pool's edge, also looked down at his arm. A greenish streak started to spread across his skin. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, jumping out of the water. In a matter of seconds, the pool descended into chaos. Ethan, casually swimming in the middle, didn't realize what was happening until Sophia screamed again. "Oh my God, look at my hand, it's turning green." Ethan froze, looking down at his chest. A dark green stain was spreading from his chest to his arm. "Shit, what the hell is going on?" They panicked, rushing toward the pool's steps, trampling over each other in a frantic attempt to escape. The girls screamed as the green spread across their bodies, while the guys scrubbed at their skin, only to realize the more they rubbed, the more the green clung to them. One girl screamed in desperation, "No way! I have a date tomorrow. What's happening to my skin?" Brandon, frantic, grabbed Ethan by the shoulders. "What the hell did you do to his pool?" But Ethan, equally panicked, staggered back, his eyes wide with terror as he saw his own reflection in the phone screen. A bright green face, looking like a cartoon character out of a costume party. Jaden bit his lip to keep from laughing too soon. He stepped out of the car, walking slowly toward his house. He knew now Ethan couldn't escape the embarrassment. The screams echoed through the backyard. Green-tinged figures scrambled to gather their things, rushing across the lawn, desperately trying to find an exit. Some were so panicked they ran straight into the street, forgetting to put on their jackets, exposing their bright green skin under the streetlights. Jaden entered through the gate, slowly tapping on his phone, adjusting the camera to get the best angle. He made sure everything was recorded, every face, every reaction, every moment. Ethan realized that this time he had lost. But the fun wasn't over. Jaden knew the true humiliation was still ahead. The screams echoed across the backyard, tearing through the calm atmosphere of the neighborhood. The rich kids, who usually wore an air of arrogant confidence, were now panicked, as if they had just stepped out of a nightmare. The sounds of water splashing, objects clattering, and frantic footsteps on the poolside tiles formed a chaotic symphony, an image Jaden would never forget. He stood right in front of the house, phone in hand, capturing every shameful moment of those who thought they could trample on him without consequences. Ethan, the leader of the rich kids, now looked like a cartoon character who had just been dunked in a bucket of blue paint. He staggered out of the pool, eyes wide as he looked down at his body. The yellow lights on the walls reflected off his skin, which had turned a deep shade of green from his neck down to his toes. His stomach, chest, and arms looked as if some mischievous imp had pranked him on Christmas Eve. "No, this can't be happening. What the hell is going on?" Another girl, Sophia, screamed in terror as she looked at her hand, so frantic that she turned and ran wildly, forgetting to pick up her shoes. Each step she took left behind a small trail of water on the tiles, like eerie green footprints. Tyler, still in the water, scrubbed his skin with both hands, trying to remove the strange color that had clung to him. But the more he scrubbed, the further the green spread, staining him like an uncontrollable ink blot. "Stop standing there and screaming. Find some clean water," another voice yelled, rushing to the water faucet on the side of Jaden's house, turning it on full force and plunging his hands into the stream. But when the water flowed over their skin, what everyone expected didn't happen. The green didn't wash away. Tyler dug his nails into his skin, trying to scrape off the bizarre color, but all he got was red, irritated skin, and the green hue only became more vibrant under the lights. "What the hell is this? I can't go to school looking like this. My mom's going to kill me." Ethan gasped for air, his hands trembling as he pressed them to his face, then frantically searched his pockets for his phone. Jaden knew exactly what he was going to do. Call his parents. But before Ethan had a chance to dial, Jaden pressed the live stream button on Instagram. A humorous background tune played in Jaden's video, completely contrasting with the chaotic scene unfolding. On screen, Ethan and his friends appeared, their glowing green skin sprinting frantically around the yard as if cursed by some ancient spell. Under the live stream title, Jaden wrote a simple yet biting phrase: "When rich kids think the rules don't apply to them." Within a minute, the viewer count skyrocketed into the hundreds. Comments started flooding in. "What's going on? Are these guys cosplaying as Yoda? Oh my God, if this is a filter, it's amazing. Someone explain, I'm laughing so hard I'm gonna pass out." Jaden smirked as he watched the viewership climb by the second. Now, Ethan wasn't just a fool in front of his friends. He was a laughingstock to the whole school and the internet. Ethan suddenly realized this. He turned around, staring directly at Jaden's phone, and in that moment his eyes were filled with horror. "You're live streaming?" Jaden simply shrugged, grinning provocatively. "Oh, you caught on fast. I just wanted everyone to enjoy this glorious moment." "Shut it off. Now," Ethan growled, charging toward Jaden, but forgetting that his feet were still wet. Thud. He slipped, falling flat on the tiled floor, his green skin shimmering under the lights like a giant frog just leaping onto land. The laughter in the live stream comments exploded. "Oh my God, I can't breathe." This is karma at its max level. Someone get him a Hulk costume. Jaden looked down at Ethan, his smile never fading. "You're right, Ethan," he said, his tone light, but dripping with sarcasm. "We'll see each other again soon." Ethan gritted his teeth, his anger flaring up stronger than his humiliation. But this time, he couldn't do anything about it. He wasn't the one in control anymore. Jaden ended the live stream, but that wasn't the end of it. The video was shared by hundreds of people, spreading like wildfire. As for Ethan, he wouldn't know that in just a few hours, the whole school would know his new nickname. Green Ethan. Jaden woke up the next morning to the constant notifications buzzing on his phone beside his bed. He rubbed his eyes, reached for the device, and was immediately overwhelmed by the number of messages and notifications. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Every platform was flooded with videos of him from the night before. The view count had reached millions, and the comments were flooding in by the second. One comment, which had thousands of likes, made Jaden laugh. "They look like the Hulk, but for rich kids." Another comment was even more brutal. "Getting rich isn't hard, but getting dumb is free." Below were a series of memes cut from the video. A photo of Ethan slipping and falling, captioned, "When you think you're the king, but karma hits just at the right time." A zoomed-in shot of his face when he realized he was being live-streamed, with the text, "The moment he realizes he's not the main character anymore." A clip with the X-Files theme playing while the rich kids run around like ants after their hive was destroyed, their faces pale. Jaden laughed loudly, not out of malice, but because everything Ethan had done, he deserved this. But what was even more interesting was that the storm didn't just stay within the school. Within hours, the video spread to larger groups on Facebook and Twitter. Posts on Reddit forums were buzzing with discussions about the incident, with sensational headlines, "Rich kids think they can do anything. This is the price they have to pay." Ethan Thompson, from spoiled rich kid to the green giant of the neighborhood. Money, but no brains. Watch this group self-destruct in just one night. Some local news outlets even started covering the story, using footage from the video to talk about invasion of private property and the unforgettable consequences. And that's when things really got serious for Ethan. Ethan was no longer the one laughing at others. He was the one being ridiculed. Jaden overheard from classmates that Ethan hadn't come to school that morning. There were rumors that he had been temporarily suspended, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. Ethan's parents, who had once prided themselves on their perfect family, were now caught in the storm. His father, Richard Thompson, a well-known real estate businessman in the city, realized that this incident wasn't just affecting his son, it was threatening the reputation of the company. His mother, Veronica, had probably never faced a scandal like this in her life. She tried to control the damage by calling the principal, asking them to keep this quiet. But once it was on the internet, there was no controlling it. Social media posts began to attack the Thompson family's image directly. If his parents had taught him respect from the start, maybe this wouldn't have happened. A family that teaches their kids they're above the law? What a deserved outcome. Clients of the Thompson Real Estate Company began questioning their ethics. Some even emailed asking for an explanation of Ethan's behavior and whether a company run by this family could truly be trusted. And that's when his parents were forced to take action. Just 2 days after the incident, the Thompson family held a small press conference. Jaden didn't need to go in person. Everything was live-streamed online. He sat in his chair, took a sip of soda, and opened the video to watch. At the podium, Richard Thompson looked 10 years older than usual, his business attire not masking the stress. Beside him, Ethan sat looking uncomfortable in a dark suit, but the bruise on his neck was still visible. The press didn't pull any punches. "Mr. Thompson, do you think your son's behavior reflects something about the upbringing in your family? Does Ethan face any legal consequences for trespassing? Does your family plan to apologize to the affected homeowners?" Jaden stared intently at the screen. Would they dare apologize? Richard cleared his throat, trying to stay composed. "We deeply regret the incident. My son acted thoughtlessly, and we will ensure this doesn't happen again." But as the reporters kept asking questions, Ethan couldn't keep quiet anymore. He stood up suddenly, his voice cracking with anger. "This is all that brat's fault. He set me up. The pool had issues, it wasn't my fault." Richard grabbed his son's arm, pulling him back into the chair, but it was too late. The scene of Ethan losing his temper was immediately cut and spread across the internet, making things worse than ever. The comments exploded again. He got caught red-handed and is still blaming others? Typical rich kid. If I were his parents, I'd lock him in his room for a year. Someone tell Ethan he should be thankful he hasn't been sued yet. And right beneath the comments, Jaden left a simple line. "Taking responsibility seems like a luxury skill." He turned off the screen, a satisfied smile on his face. The game had changed. Ethan was no longer the one in control of the story. Now, he was the story. Right after the disastrous press conference by the Thompson family, public opinion continued to target Ethan. What was once only whispered behind closed doors, the frustrations that the neighborhood residents had kept to themselves to avoid causing trouble, now erupted into a fierce wave of opposition. On Facebook groups and community forums, posts about Ethan became more frequent. But this time, they weren't just about the green giant prank. They included real stories of how he had treated others over the years. An anonymous mother posted in the neighborhood group, "Ethan used to bully my son when he first moved here. He called him country boy, threw water on his bike, and even got him nearly suspended for a mistake Ethan caused. When I went to speak with the Thompson family, his mother just shrugged and said, 'Kids will be kids, they're just playing. But this isn't a game.'" Just below, another account commented, "I once caught him sneaking my morning newspaper and throwing it in someone else's trash. I didn't think much of it then, but now I see him for what he really is, someone who has no respect for anyone." The stories about Ethan kept piling up, and what was most surprising was that no one was afraid to stay silent anymore. Those who had been wronged by him, kids from the neighborhood and parents alike, began speaking out, exposing his true nature. Meanwhile, Jaden's mother, Lisa Carter, also noticed the change. The next morning, while she was watering the plants in front of the house, a middle-aged woman from the house next door walked over, holding a small box of cookies. "Lisa, I just wanted to say, I'm really impressed with how your son has handled this." The woman smiled, handing the box of cookies to her. "Ethan and his friends have been looking down on everyone here for so long, but finally, he's met someone who can stand up to him." Lisa frowned. I don't want my son to start fights with anyone, but he can't just let others walk all over him." "And he did the right thing." The woman nodded, her voice firm. "It's about time someone showed Ethan that he can't just do whatever he wants." Lisa felt a strange warmth spread through her heart. For so long, she had worried that moving to this neighborhood would be a huge challenge for her son, that they would be seen as outsiders, people who didn't belong. But at that moment, she realized that not everyone in the neighborhood was like Ethan. Where Ethan had once been the center of every gathering in the neighborhood, now he was the name everyone tried to avoid. Jaden heard from his classmates that Ethan hadn't shown up to school for an entire week, and when he returned, no one wanted to sit with him anymore. "Did you hear? His parents made him apologize to the principal and the teachers to try and reduce his punishment," one of Jaden's friends, Malik, told him with a smirk. "I bet he's never had to do that before." Not just at school, but even in the neighborhood, Ethan started to feel the shift. When he walked out of the house that morning, no one greeted him. Some people looked at him, whispered something to each other, and then turned away. Others stood silently with their arms crossed, staring at him as if to say, "We know everything now." He was used to being respected without trying, but now, every privilege he once had disappeared. What Ethan hadn't expected was that the friends he had once considered loyal allies quickly turned their backs on him. Tyler, Brandon, and the others in the group started avoiding him at school. When he walked to their table in the cafeteria, no one made space for him like they used to. One day, when he confronted Tyler outside the gym, he grabbed Tyler's shoulder in a desperate attempt to hold on to whatever power he had left. "What are you doing? You think you're better than me? Don't forget, we're both in this mess together." Tyler smirked, looking down at Ethan's hand on his shoulder before brushing it off. "I'm not the one who got turned into a joke for the whole town, Ethan." Ethan clenched his fist, but he knew Tyler was right. He had been left behind. A week after the incident, the neighborhood had completely changed its perception of the Thompson family. Jaden noticed that their once grand house now looked emptier than ever. The expensive cars still parked in the driveway, but no one came around anymore. Even when Jaden's mother went shopping, she overheard two women talking about them at the checkout. "Did you hear? I heard Mr. Thompson is thinking about selling the house." Not surprising. No one wants to stay in a place where the whole neighborhood hates them. Jaden wasn't surprised. He knew the Thompson family couldn't handle being shunned by the community they had once ruled. In his desperation, Ethan tried to find a way to restore his reputation. He posted a video on Instagram attempting to justify his actions. "This whole thing is a misunderstanding. I just wanted to have some fun with my friends, and now everyone is acting like I'm the worst person in the world." But he no longer controlled the narrative. Comments flooded in like a tidal wave. "You're not the victim, Ethan. You're just getting what you've put out. Sorry, but I can't take you seriously with that green still on your neck. A hard lesson. Hope you remember it for the rest of your life." Jaden read through each comment, shaking his head, a smirk playing on his lips. He thought he could still control the story. But the truth was, everything had long since spiraled out of his hands. Isolated, ridiculed, and under the strict control of his family, Ethan was like a wounded animal, howling in despair but unable to do anything to change his fate. He couldn't accept that, in just one night, the entire world around him had turned its back on him. He was no longer the one standing above it all, no longer the person everyone wanted to please. But more importantly, he couldn't bear the truth that Jaden was the one who had pushed him into this pit of misery. Day by day, the hatred inside him grew stronger. He was humiliated, shunned, and scolded by his parents every day for tarnishing the family's reputation. At school, he heard whispers. On the streets, he could feel the disdainful glares. Even the fading bruises on his neck were still clear enough for anyone to laugh at. He couldn't let this go. One late night, when the whole neighborhood had fallen asleep, Ethan sneaked out, heading toward Jaden's house. He stood by the back fence, staring at the pool that shimmered under the moonlight, where he had once considered it his own. It was here that he had been humiliated, here that he had gone from being worshipped to a laughingstock. He clenched his fists, his breath quick and shallow in his chest. He wasn't thinking clearly, he just wanted revenge. His hand tightened around a bottle of industrial bleach. He wanted to destroy this pool. He wanted to turn it into a filthy puddle that Jaden would never be able to use again. Ethan quickly climbed over the fence, the bottle of bleach still tightly in his hand. He rushed to the edge of the pool, twisted the cap off, and prepared to pour the entire chemical into the water. But just then, a bright light flared up. The blaring sound of an alarm went off. Ethan jumped, dropping the bleach bottle onto the ground. He turned around in panic, his heart pounding in his chest. The infrared camera had detected movement. A voice echoed from the security system speaker. "Intruder detected. Cameras are recording." Ethan froze in terror and quickly turned to run, but it was too late. Jaden, who had been lying in his room with the camera app open on his phone, had witnessed everything from the moment Ethan climbed over the fence. He stared at the screen, unable to believe how foolish Ethan had been. "This guy is beyond help," Jaden muttered, quickly pressing the save button on the video. The next morning, Jaden edited the footage from the camera. He didn't need to do anything too complicated. He just slowed down the moment when Ethan panicked at the sound of the alarm. He cut to the scene where Ethan dropped the bleach bottle. He zoomed in on Ethan's terrified face under the camera's light. And, of course, he added a humorous background track to the video. When everything was ready, Jaden uploaded the video online with a sarcastic caption, "Ethan, from the Hulk to the pool cleaner." Less than an hour later, the video exploded, even more than the previous time. He thought he could destroy the pool, but ended up starring in a comedy film. In just 1 week, Ethan went from the neighborhood prince to the poor fool. "You lost everything, Ethan. Now, do you want to lose the little dignity you have left?" Jaden couldn't help but laugh as he saw the video rack up millions of views by the morning. The online community mocked Ethan mercilessly, and this time, even people who used to be his friends joined in the fun. Jaden knew Ethan had no way out. Not long after, the police knocked on the Thompson family's door. Neighbors whispered when they saw a police car parked in front of the biggest mansion on the block. Jaden overheard his mother talking to Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived across the street. "I heard Ethan's parents filed for him to join a juvenile rehabilitation program." "Rehabilitation?" Mrs. Lisa Carter asked in surprise. "Yeah, it's a program for troubled kids. They don't want him tarnishing the family's reputation anymore." Jaden furrowed his brows. Had his parents truly abandoned him? After the incident, Ethan completely disappeared from school. No one saw him anywhere. No one heard anything about him. The Thompson house was shut tight with the curtains drawn. Then, one day, a "for sale" sign appeared in front of their mansion. Jaden stood by his window, looking at the sign, feeling an indescribable satisfaction. He had once thought he could control everything, that he could do whatever he wanted without consequences. But now, he had lost everything. He had nothing left. Jaden smiled and looked up at the clear blue sky. Justice had been served. Completely deserved. The Thompson mansion had once been one of the most luxurious homes in the neighborhood, a symbol of wealth, power, and social status for their family. Whenever there was a big event, the house would light up with brilliance, hosting distinguished guests from real estate moguls to politicians and the elite. But now, everything had changed. No more lavish parties. No more sleek sports cars of Ethan's friends parked along the driveway. No more lively conversations between the housewives, dressed in designer gowns, standing at the gate. Only a suffocating silence enveloped the entire neighborhood. The neighbors began to whisper about the Thompsons, each time they passed by the grand mansion, now cold and desolate. They no longer greeted Mr. Richard Thompson when they saw him passing by. Some even deliberately changed direction, avoiding them as though the scandal might spread like a contagion. No one in the neighborhood could forget the police knocking on their door just a few days ago, or their disastrous press conference. The online community hadn't let up, and the posts mocking Ethan continued. Every time his name appeared online, it was accompanied by some humiliating video. A woman living near Jaden's house shared with his mother when they ran into each other at the supermarket. "Did you know? I heard Mr. Thompson's company is in trouble too. Some big clients canceled their contracts because their family's reputation is in ruins." "Really?" Jaden's mother raised an eyebrow, not at all surprised. "Yeah. No one wants to do business with a family whose name is dragged through the mud. No one wants their name associated with a scandal like that." And then, as everyone had expected, it happened. One day, as Jaden walked past Ethan's house, he saw something that he knew was coming, a large sign placed right in front of the mansion. "For sale." He stood there for a moment, staring at the sign with a strange feeling. He wasn't gleeful, nor was he happy. It was just a deep sense of satisfaction, a feeling that everything had finally come to the end it was supposed to. The Thompsons had no choice but to leave the neighborhood. They had no place here anymore. Ethan's mother, Veronica, tried to salvage their reputation by sending emails to the parent association, attempting to justify her son's behavior, but no one replied. Richard Thompson, once considered a powerful businessman, was now met with wary glances wherever he went. No one wanted to work with him anymore, and no one believed that his family was the model of high society they once were. What about Ethan? He stopped going to school. No one knew exactly what happened to him, but rumors spread that he was sent to a boarding school far from the city, where his parents hoped he could be reformed from the recent scandals. A classmate of Jaden's heard from her brother, who worked at the school office, that Ethan wouldn't be returning. "I heard his family wants to move to some place less known. It seems like they think leaving here will help them escape everything." Jaden wasn't surprised. Ethan had never been the type to take responsibility for his actions. He was always used to running from the consequences rather than facing them. But this time, he couldn't run anymore. 3 days after the for sale sign went up, the first moving truck appeared in front of the Thompson mansion. Jaden stood at his window, watching as movers carried expensive furniture out, loading it onto the truck. Wall paintings, luxurious sofas, intricate chandeliers, everything was wrapped up, as if they were erasing every trace of themselves from this place. Then, as the evening approached, Jaden saw a familiar figure step out of the house. Ethan. He stood at the doorstep, eyes downcast, hands shoved into his coat pockets. No longer the arrogant, smirking figure from before. He looked tired, worn out, and perhaps had accepted his defeat. He looked up, inadvertently meeting Jaden's gaze. For a brief second, Jaden didn't see the hatred in Ethan's eyes anymore. Instead, he saw emptiness, a helplessness Ethan had never shown before. Jaden said nothing. He just stood there, silently watching him. Ethan said nothing either. He stood still for a few seconds, then turned and got into the car. The engine started, the door closed. The car sped off down the paved road, then slowly disappeared behind the row of houses. And that was the end. Ethan Thompson, the rich kid who once thought the world revolved around him, was now gone from this neighborhood, as if he had never existed. A few weeks after the Thompsons left, the neighborhood began to feel strangely more comfortable. Jaden noticed that people were starting to be more open. Before, everyone tried to maintain a perfect image, pretending to be model residents of an upscale neighborhood. But now, they talked to each other more, truly connecting, instead of just living in their isolated mansions. One day, when Jaden was mowing the lawn in front of his house, a middle-aged man, Mr. Rodriguez, came up to him, smiling. "Good job, kid," he said, giving Jaden a light pat on the shoulder. "No one dared stand up to Ethan before, but thanks to you, this neighborhood is free from someone like him." Jaden just smiled faintly. He didn't need anyone's praise. He just needed one thing. Justice had been served. And it had been served in the most perfect way possible. After months of tension, the neighborhood finally regained the peace it should have had long ago. Since the Thompson family moved out, the atmosphere here became more relaxed, more natural, without the prying eyes, gossip, or the subtle acts of contempt. The children no longer had to be cautious when riding their bikes past Ethan's mansion. Parents no longer had to worry about their kids becoming his next target. People started talking more to each other, greeting one another with genuine warmth instead of just polite pleasantries. Jaden realized that Ethan's departure wasn't just the defeat of a bully, but a victory for the entire community, and that was something worth celebrating. Jaden's mother was the one who first came up with the idea. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, she turned to him, her eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. "So, how about it? Is it time to properly inaugurate the pool?" she asked. Jaden looked up at her and smiled slightly. "You mean, throw a real party?" She nodded. "Not the sneak into someone's yard kind of party like some people used to do." Her tone was full of meaning. Jaden burst out laughing. "If you're going to do it right." Their first pool party wouldn't be an illegal invasion, but an official event, with proper invitations, an affirmation that this was truly their home, and that they were more than deserving of their place in this neighborhood. His mother immediately set to work on the guest list. Unlike the previous fake gatherings, this time everyone in the neighborhood was invited, from the large families to the elderly couples, from the kids who had always been overlooked by Ethan to the young adults who had never dared stand up to him. Anyone could join, as long as they came with a joyful and open spirit. The two of them spent the entire week preparing. Jaden took care of the decorations and setting up the lights around the pool. His mother worked on the menu with grilled foods, salads, and refreshing drinks. Some of the neighbors even volunteered to bring extra food and drinks as a way to show their support for the Carter family. "We've never had a truly fun party since the Thompsons moved in," Mrs. Rodriguez said with a laugh as she brought over a tray of hot empanadas. "Well, let's change that," Jaden's mom replied, her eyes full of excitement. Jaden stood in the backyard, looking at the pool beautifully decorated with bright string lights, lounge chairs neatly arranged, and the scent of barbecue wafting through the air. For the first time since moving here, he truly felt like this was his home. Guests began arriving at sunset, bringing smiles and enthusiasm. The atmosphere was warm and friendly, with no more awkwardness or sense of division like before. Children played in the pool without anyone scrutinizing them. Parents chatted happily, some even opening up about things they had kept to themselves when Ethan was around. A middle-aged man, Mr. Martin, walked up to Jaden while he was holding a soda can, watching the party with satisfaction. "Did you know," he said in a deep voice, "Ethan once kicked my son out of the park's basketball court just because the kid wasn't part of his club?" Jaden looked at him, not too surprised. "He was always like that," he replied. Mr. Martin nodded. "But now everything has changed." He glanced around the yard, his eyes showing a sense of relief. "Much better." Jaden smiled, raising his soda can in a silent toast. "That's right. We've finally taken our neighborhood back." As the night grew late, everyone gathered around the dinner table, laughter and music filling the air beneath the starry sky. Jaden stood still for a moment, watching the scene before him. A year ago, he never imagined he would fit in here. But now, he realized that sometimes it's the bad guys who bring the good people together. Suddenly, a group of teens burst into laughter. "Hey, does anyone remember Ethan the Blue?" one of them said, and immediately the whole group erupted in laughter. A girl quickly pulled out her phone and played the legendary video of Ethan panicking and running out of the pool. Last time I checked, this video had nearly 20 million views on TikTok. Jaden shook his head, chuckling lightly. Even though Ethan was gone, the story of him would never be forgotten. His mother saw it from afar and laughed. "Maybe we should print a commemorative photo and hang it somewhere in the yard," she teased. Jaden shrugged. "Maybe, but at this rate it's already a legend." The party lasted late into the night, but no one rushed to leave. They had waited too long for this moment, a night they could truly enjoy, without worrying about someone ruining it. And as Jaden stood on the porch, looking out at the backyard full of lights, he knew this wasn't just a party, it was a new beginning. The morning after the party, Jaden woke up with an unusually light feeling. Gone were the heavy thoughts about Ethan, the worries about the pranks, and the constant sense of having to be on guard every time he stepped out into the backyard. He opened the window, took a deep breath, and relished the fresh air of the neighborhood that, now, truly felt like a community he could call home. But the first thing that caught Jaden's attention wasn't the peaceful atmosphere. It was a moving truck parked in front of the old Thompson mansion. He squinted, curious. The new owners had arrived. For weeks, the for sale sign had stood stark in front of Ethan's mansion, a constant reminder of his failure. But today, for the first time, the neighborhood seemed a little more alive. Jaden saw a couple standing in front of the door, chatting with the movers. The man seemed dignified yet friendly, while the woman was helping two kids step into a whole new world. The two kids, a boy and a girl, were probably in middle school, not much older than each other. Both carried sports backpacks, and when Jaden looked closer, he noticed the logo on their bags was from a local swim team. They were swimmers. That made Jaden chuckle softly. It was ironic that the people replacing Ethan were a family with kids who loved swimming, instead of someone who had always treated other people's pools like private property. He hadn't planned on making friends right away, but it turned out the opportunity came sooner than he thought. That afternoon, while Jaden was swimming a few laps in the pool after his workout, he suddenly heard a voice from the fence that separated their two homes. "Wow, your pool is amazing." Jaden stopped, raising an eyebrow as he looked toward the voice. Standing by the fence was the boy he had seen earlier, about 12 or 13 years old, with slightly curly hair and wearing a sports hoodie. Beside him was the girl, black-haired and quieter, but just as curious. "You guys just moved in, right?" Jaden leaned on the edge of the pool and asked. "Yes, I'm Ryan, and this is my sister Emma," Ryan quickly introduced. Emma gave a slight nod, not saying much but still offering a small smile. "I'm Jaden. Welcome to the neighborhood," Jaden greeted. "Can you swim?" Ryan asked, his eyes lighting up. Jaden laughed. You could say that. We swim too. Our parents got us into the swim team when we were little. Is your pool deep?" Ryan eagerly asked, while Emma remained quiet but clearly interested. Jaden was a little surprised by Ryan's enthusiasm. The boy wasn't like Ethan. He didn't have any arrogance or self-importance in the way he spoke. Instead, Ryan had a positive energy, a sincerity that Jaden could feel from their first meeting. "It's pretty deep. If you guys like swimming, you can come over any time." Ryan's eyes lit up. "Really? I thought people around here wouldn't like their neighbors bothering them." Jaden laughed. "Only a few people like that, but they don't live here anymore." He didn't elaborate, but Ryan seemed to understand immediately. The boy chuckled, while Emma quietly observed, clearly intrigued. A week later, Ryan and Emma started visiting more often. At first, it was just brief conversations over the fence, but gradually, the kids began bringing their goggles, towels, and swimsuits, diving into the pool as if it were their own. "One day, can you teach me how to do a flip turn?" "I always lose momentum when I touch the wall," Ryan asked one day as they sat by the poolside. Jaden was a little surprised. He'd never really taught anyone to swim, but he knew the technique well. "Sure, get in the water and I'll show you." Ryan eagerly jumped in, while Emma sat on the edge, watching with a curious look in her eyes. "What about you?" Jaden asked, noticing she hadn't gotten in yet. "I'm better at swimming than Ryan," Emma answered succinctly, shrugging. Ryan turned to her, frowning. "Hey, you don't always have to brag like that." Jaden laughed at their playful banter. "Then prove it. Get in and race me." Emma raised an eyebrow challengingly, then said nothing more and silently jumped into the pool. Over the next few days, Jaden wasn't just their neighbor anymore. He became their swimming instructor. Ryan eagerly absorbed everything, while Emma quietly observed and only tried things when she felt confident. But both of them shared one thing. They never looked down on anyone, and they were always ready to learn. Jaden realized that at last the Thompson mansion had found new owners who truly deserved it. And for the first time in a long while, his pool was no longer a place for trespassers. It was a place for people who truly appreciated it. One late afternoon, after they had finished an enthusiastic swimming session, Ryan sat on the poolside, panting, but full of excitement. "Jaden," he said, "you're not what I thought you'd be." Jaden raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Ryan shrugged. "Before we moved here, I thought you'd be the kind of person who's hard to approach, but now I see you're the best neighbor we've ever had." Emma, who usually didn't speak much, nodded in agreement. Jaden smiled, a feeling of relief washing over him. "As long as you don't mess with my pool when I'm not home." Ryan burst out laughing. "No way! I'm not as dumb as some people." He didn't name names, but they all knew who he was talking about. And so they laughed under the sunset, by a pool that had truly become a place for those who deserved it. One summer afternoon, as Jaden lay on a lounge chair by the pool, Ryan and Emma sat on the steps, splashing water around while arguing about who could swim faster. They had become a familiar part of his backyard, but that didn't bother Jaden at all. On the contrary, he enjoyed the energy they brought. It made the place feel like a true shared space, free from the toxic remnants of the past left by Ethan. But there was still one thing there to remind them of what had happened. Beside a small wall near the lounge area, right by the pool entrance, a carefully framed photo hung. Ryan was the first to spot it. Holding a towel to his hair, He accidentally glanced up and caught sight of figures running in panic, their pale green skin standing out under the backyard light. He raised an eyebrow, jumped off the chair, and walked over for a closer look. "What's this?" Ryan asked, pulling Emma over. "Is this—" Emma fell silent, staring at the photo, then turned to look at Jaden with a mixture of surprise and delight. "Is this real?" Jaden put his soda can down and chuckled lightly. "Completely real." Ryan's jaw dropped, and he burst out laughing when he realized it was the image of the rich kid scrambling away from Jaden's pool after getting dyed green. "No way. Did you really print this out?" Ryan laughed so hard he had to brace himself against the wall to keep from falling. "This kind of greatness would be a waste not to print." Jaden shrugged, his tone smug yet light. That photo wasn't just a joke, it was a reminder that no one could escape the consequences of their actions. It was a symbol of the payoff, a reminder that sometimes justice didn't need fists, just a smart plan. Jaden recalled the day he decided to print the picture. At first, he had kept it as a personal memento, a small reward for himself after everything that had happened. But then an idea flashed. Why not make it part of the pool? A reminder that the pool had once been violated, but it was here where the greatest lesson was taught to those who had looked down on others. So, he chose a frame that fit just right, placing it where anyone who entered could see it. A subtle warning for anyone thinking of doing what Ethan had done. It wasn't cruel revenge, but an indelible mark. And the result? Every time someone visited Jaden's house, their gaze would inevitably be drawn to the photo. Is this real? Look, their skin is as green as goblins. Oh my God, who would have thought these rich kids would end up like this? Even people who already knew the story, like Mrs. Rodriguez or Mr. Martin, would chuckle heartily whenever they saw the photo, as if remembering the most priceless moment in the neighborhood. Ryan plopped down in the chair, shaking his head, still not believing it had actually happened. "Jaden, I swear, if I were Ethan, I'd never dare come back to this neighborhood." Jaden chuckled lightly, shrugging. That's exactly why he never came back. Then Ryan had a mischievous idea. "Do you think we should take another picture?" Jaden squinted. "What do you mean?" Ryan jumped up, ran a little ways off, and struck a pose like an Olympic athlete, while Emma stood with her arms crossed, looking at her brother with an exasperated expression. "A new photo. To replace the image of those evil rich kids with one of us, the ones who actually deserve the pool." Jaden burst out laughing. "Is that so? I don't think you could pull it off, Ryan." "Challenge accepted." Ryan grinned broadly. None of them realized that, without meaning to, they had just created a new tradition for the pool. Anyone who came to this place, anyone who became a part of it, would leave their mark. But not through violation like Ethan, but through truly joyful moments. And Jaden knew this was the real meaning of victory. A week later, a picture of Ryan and Emma was hung right next to the old one. This time, no image of the defeated running away in shame, but of two kids holding up their swimming medals, smiles beaming on their faces. Under the picture, Jaden wrote a small caption. "Those who take will be forgotten, but those who deserve will always remain." Ryan stood looking at it for a long time, then smiled proudly. "Jaden, I love the way you think." Emma, as usual, simply nodded quietly, but in her eyes there was a recognition Jaden didn't need to hear aloud. He looked at both of them, then turned to look at the pool. Once a battlefield, but now truly a part of his family, a part of this neighborhood. And for the first time since he had arrived here, Jaden knew one thing for sure. He had reclaimed it all, in a fair, clever, and totally deserved way. As time passed, the neighborhood that Jaden once thought of as a strange place full of fake people and bizarre unspoken rules had now become a true community. A year after Ethan left, there were no more whispers behind their backs, no more condescending looks from the second-floor balcony, no more people who thought they had the right to step into someone else's backyard just because they were accustomed to privilege. The atmosphere had completely changed. The people in the neighborhood began to be more friendly and open. Small parties popped up more often, but this time they were not extravagant events meant to show off for the elite. They were sincere get-togethers, where people truly cared about one another. Even on weekends, Jaden sometimes saw the kids who used to be bullied by Ethan riding their bikes around the block without fear. No one had to avoid anyone anymore. No one had to bow down to those who thought they were above the law, but the biggest change was not just in the neighborhood, it was in Jaden himself. When he first moved here, Jaden always felt like an outsider. He knew his mother had worked hard to buy their house, but that didn't mean everyone here would welcome them. He was used to the scrutinizing stares, the unspoken prejudice, and the dismissive words that didn't even need to be spoken aloud. But after everything, he stood up and fought, not just for himself, but for others too. He had changed the way this neighborhood operated. He not only defended his home, but also taught a lesson in fairness to those who thought they would never be held accountable for their actions. And now, his pool was no longer a place of intrusion, but a place to bring people together. On weekends, Ryan and Emma still dropped by often. Sometimes there were other neighborhood kids, the ones who used to be looked down upon by Ethan, now enjoying the place comfortably and happily. When Jaden's mom saw this scene, she simply smiled. A satisfied smile because she knew that her son had truly found his place here. One late afternoon, after Jaden finished his workout and was about to head to the pool, his phone buzzed. A new email. He glanced at the subject line and immediately felt a chuckle creeping up inside. Ethan Thompson. New neighborhood, same trouble. Jaden clicked open the email. It was from an old friend who had once gone to school with Ethan, someone who had left before everything blew up. The email was simple, but enough to say everything. I guess you'll find this funny. Ethan's family moved to a new neighborhood, and guess what? He's causing trouble again. He tried to bring back the old order, but this time it didn't work out. The people there aren't as nice as you. He got expelled after 3 months. His parents had to move again. Jaden finished reading and let out a small laugh. Not surprised, Ethan had never learned his lesson. He didn't understand that it wasn't the world that was the problem. He himself was the problem. Jaden didn't mind much. His life no longer revolved around Ethan. He marked the email as read and set the phone down. He walked into the backyard, letting the sunset's rays warm his skin, gazing at the pool shimmering under the fading light. Everything was peaceful. Everything was just the way it should be. He took a deep breath and then dove into the water, relishing the present moment, a life he had fought for, and no one could take it away anymore. Because this time, it was truly his. And he had won. So Jaden's story came to an end, but the lesson it left behind would last forever. Ethan thought he could do whatever he wanted without facing consequences, but he was wrong. In the end, karma always finds those who don't respect others, and Jaden proved that sometimes you don't need to fight back to win, you just need a clever plan and a little patience. The pool that was once a place of intrusion had now become a symbol of fairness, of those who truly deserved it, and of a community that had learned to unite more than ever. Have you ever encountered an Ethan in your life? A bully who thought they could get away with anything without anyone daring to fight back? How did you handle the situation? Share your story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss more exciting stories. And remember, sometimes the sweetest revenge is letting karma do its job. See you in the next stories.